of the day, resiliency and protecting our natural environment. I think we all have now recognized how increasingly fragile we are, given the two recent storms, one named, one not, as well as seeing things like the Washington Post article about the continued level of sea rise, and it seems that we're getting 1,000-year storms every 6 months, or 100-year storms every 6 months. Um, you know, somewhere. Well, we're getting bigger storms more frequently here, and right now, not what's heading our way. You think about what the plains, the Low Ohio Valley, and the Southeast have been experiencing in terms of repeated supercell storms and tornadoes. It's just incredible. And we've obviously experienced a lot of issues, erosion to our critically important dune system, and we'll definitely want to talk about that. Madeline's raised, I know the marsh management plan has looked at issues related to protecting our marshes, and they're the best barrier, not quite as powerful a barrier as the beach, as the dunes are on the north side of the island along the Kiowa River, given some of the flooding events we've had. So all these are issues to discuss. Our first topic was going to be the Kiowa River Bridge feasibility study, but because we adjusted our schedule ever so slightly, we'll hold on that. And perhaps
If you want to do it now, we can.
They're here, but I know there's a few people.
yeah, there may have been some people in the community, so maybe we can go to number 3 first. And Councilmember Heidingsfelder, could I impose on you to kick us off with Evie and Brian?
So just to remind everybody, we decided to purchase the charging stations here at the municipal center last week or something, and the only thing we still need to determine are basically 3 things. One, what are we going to charge, and what are we going to charge whom? Is it one flat rate? Is it a different rate for residents versus non-residents, et cetera? And all the administrative process that would be required to manage that. But what are we charging? Per kilowatt hour or per minute? Okay, that's the first question. The second question is opening hours. Okay, are we going to have it a 24/7 facility, or are we restricting it from, I don't know, 7 a.m. to 8 p.m. or something, just, to have better control of what happens on our property? And then third is the safety topics. Okay, do we need more lights? Do we need more cameras to make sure that after, I guess, 5-ish, in the afternoon, are we able to control the property? Are we going to make it safe for people to come there and charge their vehicle until the facility closes? So, and I had asked Michael Nardelli and Brian to give us a little bit of a data sample and some recommendations for these topics.
Are we going to discuss
Focusing on these topics, and then we will discuss and need to make decisions, ideally today, because we need to move forward with some of these things in preparation for the station actually being operational before July 4th.
Yeah, absolutely. And those are the key topics that we'll certainly discuss today and hopefully come up with a plan forward. I think primarily the focus that I took is looking at if and how we're going to implement fee schedules for the public. And I'll go through some of the thought processes behind that. We'll go through this pretty quickly. I just wanted to give a quick overview of the Go Green initiative as a whole. We met some time ago. It's been, I think, coming up on a year now that we reinstated the Go Green initiative. We came up with a mission statement that is available for people to review. We won't go through the whole thing. The focus areas, we came up with 10 focus areas. They're listed here. Everything from looking at soft plastics on the island, to solar paneling, to composting, and electrification on the island between fleets, and then, of course, what we're going to talk about today being the electric vehicle charging stations. So the group's goal, what we came up with, was to implement a network of charging stations throughout the island. These charging stations are going to be strategically placed to maximize usage and accessibility for the residents and guests of the island. And they're going to obviously require a lot of planning. Yeah. Sure. Okay, so looking at charging at Town Hall, as you guys know, we've started the charging station project over behind Town Hall. And again, just for anyone that may not have heard, we're installing 2 dual port charging stations initially behind Town Hall with the infrastructure to increase that. So it's going to be for fleet use and for public use as well. So now what we're looking at is for the public use of it, the logistics behind that, and how we're going to move forward with fees and what that cost is going to be. The ability right now with the software that Blink has to implement 2 separate fee schedules, and then they're working on the software to increase that number to 3 or 4 separate fee schedules simultaneously. Hopefully this calendar year is what we've been told. So right now we can implement up to 2 fee schedules. What that looks like is some options to consider. We have a couple. You know what? I'll just go over to this options to consider slide. So what we can do, we can take the approach of eating all the cost. We don't charge any fees to anybody, fleet or public, and that the town will incur the total cost of the project and any maintenance and everything like that. We will cover that cost. The other option, we could program the software to incur the cost for the town fleet vehicles, but we could also charge the public. A standard rate is 20 to 25 cents per kilowatt hour, and that will get us to a break-even price. And I will say that these numbers these based off these fee schedules are for an estimated 10 hours of usage a day by the public. So for 10 hours of usage a day, 20 to 25 cents per kilowatt hour, we're breaking even on our investment. Yes, sir. It's going to be that 20 to 25 cent range. Yeah, that's kind of the standard what public charging stations are charging. So that's a question that I can't answer with a hard and fast response. Yeah, absolutely. So it depends on your vehicle. Vehicles are different and require different pulls of electricity. So, for instance, we've got our Ford Lightning can take 12.3 kilowatt hours at a time, whereas Chevy Volt might only pull 11.3 kilowatt hours at a time. So it's a hard thing. It's a hard question for me to answer, to say this is the answer to that question, because it varies from vehicle to vehicle.
I think it also becomes a longer time frame to charge it all the way up. So it's relatively fast to get half full, and then it gets a little bit more time to get full. But half full gives you enough to get around the island multiple times. So. What?
So, I mean,
somewhere in the
let me
$20
phrase the question this way. To charge for the one of the Ford 150 Lightning, I think, to try to address Madeline's question, it's near empty. You want to charge it to 80%. How long will that take, and how much will that cost for that vehicle?
So if we are, let's just call it empty, and to get to 80% on the charging stations that we have, it's going to take around 6-7 hours.
That's what we have, not what we are installing.
Based on what we're installing.
Right.
Okay.
Yeah, they're level 2 charger.
Is this the same? I thought that was faster than our little charging station right now.
Oh, yeah, that's right. These that we're getting are more amperage, so we're looking at maybe like
I'm
a
asking
4
about what we're
Yeah,
installing,
what
not
we're installing,
doing currently.
what we're installing has bigger amperage than what we currently have. So to get that 80% charge, we're looking at maybe like 4 hours.
4 hours, and what would be the cost of that?
The cost of that based off the kilowatt hours for our truck, assuming we were to do 20 to 25 cents, it would be around $20, $20-ish range.
$25 is usually.
So what we were talking about, that's to spend 4 hours there. I assume a lot of people are not gonna spend 4 hours here. They're gonna spend half hour, an hour, maybe? And so it's what, we're looking at $5 or something?
Ish.
I mean, it's round about a fourth to a fifth of what it costs you at a gas station. It depends on the vehicle, it depends on the on the distance you can drive, et cetera. But it's about a fourth to a fifth of a gasoline tank fill up, basically.
Yeah, that's absolutely right. So that's one option. If we wanted to pay back our investment, then we would look to charge in the area of 30 to 35 cents per kilowatt hour to recoup the whole investment. And then, but again, these are determined by the real usage of what we get. We don't have any data at this point to give us a really great understanding of how we're going to be using these charging stations. So again, this is based off of kind of like a standard what the installer uses to estimate usage and costs and everything at that 10 hours a day uptime for cars being plugged in.
Maybe look at this differently. So this is based on 3 years amortization, I think we said, right?
Yes.
So 3 years amortization, which is shorter than you usually would think. Usually would probably take 5 years, but since technology turns over so quickly, I recommended to go with 3 years. So, which is more aggressive, of course, which drives up the price. And what they calculate with a roughly 10 hours, that means I would think about 4 vehicles a day, which is maybe a little bit ambitious. So I would think that going to 25 or maybe even a few cents higher gives us a little bit of a cushion, and we can change this with a push of a button, right? So,
But 10 hours a day is just generating like $30, right?
pretty much. I mean, as reference point, so when I was still working, I was responsible for safety, environment, et cetera, globally for the last 2 companies I worked for the last 20 years. So in the last company, we installed charging stations at every of our facilities worldwide, either 2 or 4 or 6 or 8, depending on the location. We decided, but on our property behind the gate. So the only ones that could really access it were our employees, our own vehicles, very little, and vendors. So we decided at the end, after looking all of this and saying, charging anybody, even employees or vendors, it costs you administratively more than just giving it for free. So we decided that all our charging stations would be free. Now, today you have better software, it's much easier, you don't need all this administrative process, et cetera. But back at the time, it was more complicated. That's why we decided not to charge, just as a reference point.
That gross, I mean, that's a gross number, I assume. What's taken out of that? It's $30 generated gross, but is the software company or service provider taking? Yeah, admin fee?
There are fees associated, which is where that 20 to 25 cent number comes into play. That would basically cover our warranty costs, maintenance costs, and I've got
And the electricity cost.
right. So I can.
But I think the important part, the way we looked at it, was what are people charging elsewhere in our vicinity? So the Whole Foods in West Ashley, the charging stations at the Citadel Mall, et cetera. So we looked at those numbers, and they were all in this area between 20 and 30 cents. So 25 is maybe a good, average to upper end of the spectrum. They're charging often more along the highways, right? But in normal, locations, that's what people or institutions usually charge.
Yes, I understand that the rate is being charged. I'm still struggling with the math a little bit. If it's $30 a day, that's $10,000 a year that we're generating in revenue. And then we've got expenses associated against that, correct?
Yeah, the electricity.
Yeah, electricity and maintenance and,
Never intended to.
yeah, okay.
And
So-
my understanding is that most installations in non-highway locations like West Ashley, et cetera, they all basically want to recoup their investment, and that's it.
So, but that's kind of what I'm wondering. It sounds like 10,000, so our expenses, maintenance and cost of electricity would be substantially lower than $10,000 a year, so that we are still basically paying off or recouping some of our investment over.
So that would be the 30 to 35 cents. That's the last version, where we would be able to amortize the $100,000 that we are going to spend for the two stations, 4 chargers. That's the other option, that we are just saying, hey, we want our money back.
What price does the town pay for electricity per kilowatt hour? Do we know?
I don't know what the per kilowatt hour rate is, but our monthly bills are our monthly electricity bills for the whole complex, including the garage, they fluctuate between $4,000 and $6,000.
That doesn't really help. The reason I ask is because Berkeley Electric charges more from 3 to 7 in the afternoon, and you can actually get on a plan where you get a much better rate away from 3 to 7 than during 3 to 7. And it's 3 to 7 is 4 times as much as not 3 to 7 during the afternoon. So that's another consideration to think about is, and what I was thinking about this is if we're buying electricity, did we think about going the extra step and installing solar panels to generate?
Have a project also in the pipeline.
That's the real kind of the success story. If you can do that, then you're really saving
Yeah, and that,
the environment and.
It's another
saving money.
project under Go Green to put solar panels on that garage building, but that's a different topic. We are not there yet, so.
right. So yeah, again, what we have to consider today is basically, it's really kind of, if you take the math out of it, our goals are, well, we have 3 options: incur the whole cost of the project, and it's an amenity, if you will, to residents and guests. Try to get our project costs back and break even, break even, month to month, or we get money, we profit from this. Those are the two kind of, if you break it down in those terms, that's what we're kind of looking at right now.
Brian, my recollection is the vendor said right now they can handle 2 different pricing levels, and would hopefully soon be able to at least add a 3rd. So either if we're not charging ourselves for fleet vehicles, then that means that's one price. And then a second price, there would be then no differential with regard to anybody else using it. Or we can essentially charge ourselves the 25 cent, the same as members of the public, and then charge a differential for residents, and then charge a differential for other users. Right now,
I
that's.
mean, the question, yes, it is correct, of course. But honestly, the way I look at it, that's my personal opinion, there's no different at the gas pump, if you're a resident or no resident. So why would we make that difference? Residents don't really pay so much into our pockets, So that's where I would also, for simplicity reasons, and signage reasons, et cetera, I would go with one price, okay? And as I said, I would either go to the 25 cents at least, or actually even to a 30 cents, because everything is more expensive on Kiowa anyway. So people are used to it, so that we also have some recoup of our investment.
So keep in mind, I don't think we're going to have residents using this because they're just going to plug in at home.
So if I may speak to that, we did a survey, and I've got, I think, some of the results up here. So we took a survey at the beginning of this There were 1,400 respondents to the poll, and there were 44% of those said that they would like to see charging stations at Town Hall and Freshfields. So it's not an insignificant number of people that are looking for a charging station away from their home, and then again, specifically referencing Town Hall and Freshfields
So,
Village.
but the only issue, I think, with that data, I mean, that survey was responded to by Johns Island people as well.
Yeah, but very little.
Well, I thought, I recall that there were only fewer than 200 electric vehicles on the island or something.
We have about 340, I think was the number.
Okay.
Around
Came up,
300,
right?
yeah.
So we know there are about 340, let's
Okay.
say. If they are permanent or not, we don't know.
Okay.
But to Russ's point, yes, if you're a single home owner, you probably have a charging station in your home, and you'd probably charge overnight, okay? Out of own experience, sometimes you do park your car in the garage and then you forget to charge.
And
Well, yeah,
again-
for convenience reasons, you may want to do that. But I would expect the majority of the use
I wasn't finished yet.
all the time.
Yeah, but there's one element that also was confirmed, I guess, but we knew about that beforehand, is that there are various HOAs, especially into condo buildings and in townhouses, apartments, whatever you want to call it, so not single-family homes. And they actually don't allow people to charge their electric vehicles on their premises. So we do have residents, part-time or full-time, that have no opportunity to charge at home. So what the quantity is, we have no idea. We did not ask that particular question in the survey. But there are homeowners or property owners or condo owners that are not able to charge their vehicle at their premises.
When you did the survey, did you say Freshfields and Town Hall together, or did you separate? Do you want it at Freshfields and?
They were separated. These
How
were the
did
two
how did the
top
numbers shake out, Freshfields versus Town Hall in desirability?
It was, Town Hall was second to Freshfields. I believe, if I remember, we gave them options to.
Yeah, they've been counterintuitive to me, too, yeah. I mean,
There's something to be said for a public display of commitment behind this initiative by offering it up at no cost, at least for X period of time, saying the town is very committed and is willing to show its commitment by virtue of offering this at no cost.
My concern with that is, when you stop giving something for free, then you have public outcry.
Yeah, there's so little money that's going to be generated by this that I'm not sure that the goodwill that we might generate doesn't overwhelm that. And yes, you have a good point, but I think that if we position this, that it's a trial, that we're encouraging the use of as many different environmental techniques as we can.
Well, it's
There's
all in the
something
way
to
you
be said.
present it. You can say, as an introduction to the system, we're gonna do the first 3 months for free, and then after that, you start charging, but something like that, or some hybrid of that.
I think something along like that may make sense, and I would be less concerned by the pushback if, in fact, most of the users were,
Off-island.
Yes.
off-island
Yeah.
visitors, guests, and
Agreed.
all
That's a
that,
fair
because
point.
it's kind of, they're
Too bad.
one-offs, yeah,
That's a fair
yeah.
point.
This model, to say for a certain period of time it's free, gives us, of course, the chance to better understand how much it is really used, so that we have then more real-time data to determine the price that we want to charge, right? Because at the moment, you know, I think the 3-year amortization is the right one. So I'm not so much worried about that. The question is really, is it 5 hours a day, is it 10 hours a day, or is it 15 hours a day that they are charging? So that gives us a very important element for the calculation that after these 3 or 6 months.
Obviously, the data would be in a sense skewed because people would be taking advantage of the fact that it was free, but if nobody was taking advantage of the fact that it was free, or very few people, that would, I guess, be.
Well, one of my biggest concerns about this is allowing anybody other than the town to charge off hours. This can be a very lonely place, 8 o'clock, 9 o'clock, 10 o'clock at night, and I don't want to be exposed to the risk of an assault or something like that because you have no security here.
Can it be programmed so it's only the hours of operation are 7 to 7?
Yes, sir.
I think we don't want people there charging.
Yes.
Yeah, yeah.
We have to decide,
Yeah.
you know, is it 24/7, or is it only weekdays, or is it all days but only from 7 to 7?
I would just say only when town hall is in operation, so there's somebody here. I think even, well, you may be able to go to 6, but I understand the point. Having somebody charging up after 8 o'clock at night is dangerous, and you can make the same argument on a Sunday or Saturday. If nobody's here, something bad can happen. I don't think we want to expose ourselves to that liability.
I certainly appreciate that, and I don't know that it's wrong to put hours on it. I mean, there's a lot of facilities around that do have hours, dump sites, things like that. I mean, me personally, I know that I've had to go to the gas station at late hours of the night in order to get home. That might be a little bit different here because it's in close proximity to most residences, but that just something else to think about too.
So 2 observations. Coming from California, I was there when they introduced the toll-free lanes for electric vehicles. They did free charging. There was a significant backlash to free because the theory was these people are well-heeled. They don't need something free. The people who need free stuff are at the other end of the socioeconomic spectrum. And that was a material backlash about giving away free charging, and even they ultimately stopped giving the HOV lane access to the EVs. So just keep that in mind. You don't want people to say, oh, the well-heeled guys are getting stuff for free again. The other thing is, when I think about usage and how and when it would be used, and a little bit to Russ's point about security, I guess we have charging capabilities here today for our vehicles. I would think the usage would be kind of the 1 hour, 2 hour charging. When somebody goes to the grocery store at Freshfields, they plug in while they're there. It's hard for me to imagine somebody coming to town hall at 6 o'clock in the morning to charge for 2 hours before they drive to work. So I think the idea is great. I think the location seems to me, without any data, to be supported more at Freshfields than here. Yeah.
And again, we were going to do this for our fleet vehicles anyway. We've got one currently, another one at the end of this month. We're going to anticipate getting a few more over the next few years. So we need them for our fleet vehicles anyways, and we wanted to just have them available for public use as well.
Should have asked this question previously, but assuming that their results of the survey don't reflect the reality that is experienced, can we relocate these things? How much is involved in
Relocate
Yeah.
them.
to,
Well-
for example, freshers, or relocating one of them? We keep one for fleet vehicle. We end up putting one of these and another one over at Freshfields.
It would be the cost of the civil work, I imagine. We would have already paid for the station itself.
It would be material, because most of the cost is, once you buy it, most of the cost is installation.
So the cost of the two stations is $14,000, if I remember, or $15,000.
Yeah.
And the whole installation is $85,000.
85,000. Yeah, okay, that's right. So, yeah, you're right, so it would be. Okay. So it would not be worth relocating one, if, just given that, it costs 14.
Assuming that there
4X,
is infrastructure that needs to be put into place, any kind of civil work, I don't think that it would be worth it. Not to say we can't look at it,
Okay.
but.
Freshfields would say we are putting 4 here and they provide all the infrastructure and we put number 5 in there from here, then the additional cost would be
De minimis. So what do we think about the price we're gonna charge? Are we gonna just break even? 25 cents or 35 cents?
One suggestion is, and then I don't, not sure if, I can't recall exactly what we authorized, whether we need a further council action, which we probably can't take right now. So if the council's sufficiently authorized and this is directing staff to implement, then we can do that. I'm not quite sure. Yeah, oh, okay. So,
we authorized the investment, right? And that's what we did back in March or April, I forgot.
Yeah, last month.
At that time, we also said that we are using the retreat to determine the cost, the opening hours, and the safety costs.
so, just hearing the discussion, my inclination would be to not make any decision right now on actually what we charge. To put out saying, we've launched, these are operational, that there's a 3-month trial, basically no charge for people to work out the kinks and everything, make people aware that they're here and see who comes over, and then we can come back to pricing. But I definitely think we should have fairly limited hours to, for all the reasons you say. And I don't know, it's 8 to 5 or?
8 to 5,
Yeah,
8 to 6.
yeah, something like that.
Something like that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Me too.
7 days a week.
Well, that is a good question, because if it's during the daylight hours, I'm less concerned, even if it's a weekend and even if nobody's here.
I'm less concerned.
Less concerned,
yes.
not unconcerned, but much
Right,
less
very
concerned.
well put. Not
Yeah,
unconcerned.
but
I would say every day.
every day, 8 to, well,
All right, but let's just pause for a second. So, I still have the concerns
I'm
on the
thinking
weekends.
mostly, I'm thinking try to keep it mostly daylight hours all year round.
But you
and
can
that's
still
got-
have an assault in the middle of the day here if there's nobody.
But that could be true because we have the dumpsters and they're not. People could be,
Dumpsters are a little different because you drive in, you dump, and you're out of here. If you're plugged in, you're here for a long time. I understand there's all those things going on. I don't want to see us exposing ourselves to saying, how do you have something that's available to the public with no security? That's my concern. Yeah, but that just then is to catch the bad guy after the fact. You want to stop the bad guy from doing something bad. But that's why we have a democratic vote. That's my opinion, and you guys, or we collectively then vote on it.
I mean, I don't know how you make that go away. Then you would suggest never on weekends because they're just.
That is correct. That's what I would suggest. You put it up for the vote.
And at 6 a.m., people aren't necessarily here as well, so, and people aren't necessarily here at 6 p.m. so,
I understand all those points.
I don't know, I think.
That's why you have a vote.
Yeah,
So
well, no,
we'll
and
vote
it's not,
the way we want.
I appreciate the concern. I guess can't solve for every eventuality. Can you put in the most reasonable set of rules to capture kind of most of the potential risk scenario? And I think if focused primarily on daylight hours with a camera.
I understand your position, and you understand mine, and then we'll just vote and see where it goes.
I mean, we certainly add signage. This
Well,
area is
that's the
under
thing, we can't
surveillance.
really- Well, I want to get a
Just a
sense,
consensus.
so,
Yeah.
because we're going to be giving direction to staff to implement something that's already been
Well, you can
authorized.
still implement it. I'm all for putting them in. We're just talking about when it's available for usage.
Well, but we've got to then, so I'm just trying to get a sense of where everybody is. We can't actually vote because.
All right, but no, I think we're all agreeing that we want it, so we can get back to town council and vote on the hours of operation.
So we
that's all I'm
can
saying.
wait till the next council meeting to do that, or we can simply, if there's a sense, we can begin from a staff provide direction to staff to simply implement the authorization the
Yeah,
council's
that's what
already
I'm saying.
given.
And why don't we do it step by step? So first question would be, are we going to charge right from the beginning? Or are we having a 6 months trial period where we start communicating, inviting people to come, et cetera, see what happens during certain hours? That's my next point. But, start with the 6 months and then start charging, because then we have better data to calculate. Because I'm all sensing that, we should definitely recoup our cost, but I would also vote for, recouping some of our investment, right?
me too.
So that takes us more to the 30 to 35 cents, right? Then we have more data and we are communicating right from the beginning. After 6 months trial period, we will start charging. And we can even explain that it will be based on the data that we collect, period. Is that consensus? Yeah,
I
then
would
let's
say
do it 3
I would
months.
say 3 months.
90 days.
Yeah.
And so we narrow the time frame right now, 7 AM to 5 PM.
Yeah,
Well, the question is though on the weekends.
No weekends.
So in essence, we're voting, even though.
Well,
we're-
no, I'm hearing people,
All right.
Again, we said in the council meeting that we would, discuss this. And for me, this is basically, the mayor's choice now to determine based on our feedback what he wants to do.
Got it. All right, Mr. Mayor.
The back parking lot, if you've seen that parking lot expansion, that's where they're going.
No, we're only talking about these. Fresh Fields is a different topic. That's under Eden's
and when are they
responsibility.
going to be ready to go?
Supposed to be next week.
Wow.
So we'll work on communication. So what we'll do is, I expect the directional staff will have further conversations, but to go ahead and move forward with a, 90-day trial period, we'll put out a communication.
No charge at this time?
No charge at this point in time, and we'll focus on operational hours that are, we'll discuss staff a little further to see kind of whose schedules are around here and things like that, primarily during the daylight hours, maybe an hour
And remember,
either
we have
side.
staff now on
Just some-
Saturday.
Yeah.
And then we have
does-
beach patrol every
okay,
day, so
okay.
we can have them drive by.
Yes,
So-
Aaron and I are already talking about this, how to make sure that people find it. And also, don't forget, these people that are having electric vehicle, they're all used to their apps. And the apps will show A, the location, B, the charging, and C, also the operating hours. So nobody should come here, thinking he or she can charge, and then the whole thing is shut down. So that should not occur because the information is out there.
So the other thing about the hours that just came to me, we're gonna have our own fleet plugged in at night. So you really can't be open for business.
Yes, you can, because we have 4 chargers and only 2 vehicles.
Got it, okay.
Yeah, and we still have the small charger in addition. So that is not a
And
problem.
then Aaron can cooperate with Leah at Burris to get something when our announcement goes up to
And when
keep
is
as
hours
well.
of operation, from 6 to 6, dawn to dusk?
I think we'll have a further conversation of this, but somewhere morning,
Not earlier than 6, not later
So
than 6.
we're gonna have a conversation prior to them being operable
Yes.
Next
Yes,
week,
uh,
okay.
Yes, next week.
But we do know for now, there's going to be a 90-day, no-charge trial period for everybody. Okay.
And camera.
And camera, yep. We've got one on the garage now that we can tap into and project it back towards the charging stations.
Okay. And yeah, we'll just make a decision.
We should be able to capture that data. Now, whether we own that data or does the software company own that data, or can we, what's our contract?
Or if they can generate a report,
Yeah.
not access to the data, but maybe they send us a report.
Yeah, absolutely. And then, well, and to answer that question, if we did do separate fee schedules for residents, let's say, if there was a fee schedule for residents and another one for guests, you know, at that point, we would know who's utilizing. Yeah.
Okay.
It's tracked through the app.
You put your card into the app, you download the app. It's like anything, you know, Apple Pay.
Okay,
All right, thank you all.
very good. Thank you, Brian. Now, appreciate the, yes, back to item number one. I know we have some folks that are visiting here that are interested in this topic, and apologies for the delay, but we restarted our afternoon session a little bit early. We'll make sure you guys were here for this. So, Jim, the Keel River Bridge.
Yes, sir. All right, so I'll just introduce, we have Nicole Elko here from Elko Consulting. We have Kim Morganello from Weston and Sampson. And so they're going to present the feasibility study for the bridge access. You know, we've talked about a lot about this over the last number of months. You've received a few updates at council meetings. So this is just kind of bringing all the information together. You should have received the draft report either Monday evening or Tuesday morning. So hopefully you've had a chance to look it over. So Nicole will come up and kind of get things going. Kim will finish up, and then I've got a handful of slides at the end. They get more into potential cost of the different options that might be chosen that aren't in the feasibility study. So Nicole, it's all yours, and then
Jim, good afternoon, everyone. It's nice to see some of you again and meet some new faces as well. So my name's Nicole Elko. I'm the president of Elko Coastal Consulting, based over on Folly Beach, and I had the pleasure of doing the comprehensive marsh management plan with the town a few years back on a team with Biohabitats, and many of the people in the room right now are engaged there. Thank you for your engagement. One of the recommendations was this project, which was sort of what we thought to be low-hanging fruit of an area that we could potentially implement some of the recommendations of the marsh management plan. So just to kind of put you back where we were then, the Marsh Management Committee was created, and then they created a subcommittee that kind of oversaw this feasibility study. At the same time, the Conservancy submitted a request to do a marsh restoration project, and the town was looking at some public access improvements. So we decided to put those together and look at two components here, both the public access improvements and the marsh restoration under this contract. So the study goals are listed here, and these are goals that the subcommittee sort of landed on after some discussion. The subcommittee members were Jim and Brian from the town, Lee from the Conservancy, Jake from the resort, and Andy, who represent, I guess, residents and the Planning Commission. So we worked with the teams of our two companies to land on these study goals. Of course, the restoration and public access were sort of in the title of the proposal, so we knew those were goals of the project. Conservation, of course, was a big one, with input from the Conservancy, as well as just the general guidance from the Marsh Management Plan. The desire of the committee members unanimously wanted to prevent negative impacts to the marsh. And then on top of that, we saw really nice opportunities for education, to explain the marsh restoration, let people interact with the marsh in a safe way, in a non-negative impacting sort of way. And then another cool element could be a community showcase, right? All of these educational opportunities, helping maybe even getting the community out there for a planting event, right? Really engaging everyone in the process, and highlight Kiowa as a resilience leader in this space. So the process for this feasibility study is sort of pictured on this slide. It was about a 9-month process, and it was very participatory. In other words, we met monthly either in person or virtually to discuss things like goals and progress. Jim then reported back to the larger Marsh Management Committee, and updates would come up to you all as well, and then the feedback would come back down to us, and we'd revise things. So we thought it was a good feedback of everyone's involvement. We conducted a public survey late last year, and the point there was really to understand the use patterns, right? How are people using this area? Who is using it? When are they coming? What are they doing when they go there? We met out on site with the subcommittee and some other key stakeholders, and at that point we sort of started refining the concepts that would go into this feasibility study. The goal of this, of course, was to kind of not to say this is the final answer, right? A feasibility study is sort of looking at your options and getting some guidance to set you into the implementation phase of the project. With that in mind, we did hold a meeting with regulatory agencies to see how permittable this was, right? We didn't want to go down this whole path and get to the point when we're completing this study, which is handing you basically a project that's ready to be permitted, and find out it's not permittable. So we had that meeting, and to make a long story short, there weren't very many concerns. So we were pleased to learn that this project shouldn't have any issues come time for permitting. And then you know the rest. As Jim mentioned, the report was submitted, and here we are today. So I will just comment a little bit on the public survey and then turn it over to Kim to talk to you about the concepts and the conceptual design. So the survey was, we got a total of almost 1,600 responses, and as you can see in the center there, the two blue pies are the residents. So 80% of the people that responded to this survey were Kiowa residents. And then the rest you can kind of see laid out there. And again, we asked them sort of, when do you go, why do you go, what do you do when you get there? But I think the most important statistic here is this one on the right, which is, what are you doing when you get there? How are you using this spot? And the majority of people that do use the spot are using it for passive activities, right? They're going there to bird watch, to view nature. Some people said, well, we'll just pull up in our car and eat lunch, right? It's just a nice gateway spot for folks to not really engage much, but really just to view nature. There were some respondents, as you know, that crab fish and launch non-motorized vessels, right? Kayak launching. So that is the summary of visitor use. And yeah, I think with that, I'll turn it over to Kim to kind of go over the design concept that was developed really with this use pattern in mind.
Good afternoon, everybody. Kim, great to see y'all. Kim Morganello. I work for Weston and Sampson as a resilient urban designer, and I've worked with the Kiowa Conservancy on the model rain garden project here on Town Hall site. So it's good to get out here and see some flowers blooming and some pollinators on there. But in terms of this, we'll talk through, obviously the feasibility study. A big part of that is understanding the site conditions. We are really tasked with with looking at what is feasible here on a site in terms of improved public access and in terms of any sort of marsh restoration activity. So the first part of that was really understanding the parcel boundaries, and that is included in the final report, which I'll have. But here on the left-hand side, you will see, of course, the parkway is owned by the town of Kiowa Island, and there's a 50-foot buffer from the center line of the parkway out into the marsh. And so we have that right image is really showing sort of this buffer area. That's a conservative buffer area of where any sort of activity could take place, and where any walkway or public access improvement could take place. And the reason for that is once we cross over that, then we're getting into a conservation easement held by the Kiowa Conservancy. Site conditions, there was a lot that we looked at here, but I'll just mention a few. Boat traffic in terms of wake is fairly minimal compared to a place like the Charleston Harbor, the Intercoastal Waterway. Boats do have to slow down to go under the Parkway Bridge there. When we conducted our initial site assessment, we were very happy to see all the oyster recruitment. So that would mean any sort of living shoreline, an oyster-based approach is appropriate and would likely or should be very successful. Bottom left picture, you'll see the escarpment, 12 to 18 inch escarpment. Now that's not likely going to repair itself. So the marsh edge is stressed. It is eroding. You can see it in that escarpment, so sort of this cliff face of the marsh. And so that is where you will see, if y'all were to decide to proceed, that is where a living shoreline could help to repair and restore the salt marsh. We included this last photo there, bottom right, just more as a point of interest, that during really high tide events or storm events, you are having this rack layer. We saw it on a number of our visits out here, this rack layer sort of getting tracked up against the parkway, and that is essentially shading out or stressing the existing salt marsh. Last slide on the existing conditions. In 2011, y'all received Charleston County Greenbelt funds for that improved access. So that included the parking, the parallel parking spots. That included the installation of this ramp that you see on the right. That ramp is really going right down into the salt marsh. So our concepts for improved public access actually brings that back out of the marsh. To restore that hydrology and to restore the potential that salt marsh vegetation could reestablish, and your biological activity, et cetera, could take place. There is, I believe y'all have, it was 2010 that you had the separated bicycle pedestrian path, and we did see in the survey, which is included in the final report, that people are accessing the site via bike and walking. So we took all this information, the survey that Nicole mentioned, over 1,500 people responded to that, our work with the subcommittee. Jim was communicating regularly with the Marsh Management Committee, the site conditions, all that information led into these concepts. So we have these two concepts, walkway concept 1, which goes all the way out to the Kiowa River. So we're getting people over, quote, deep water. So no matter what time of the tide, people are still accessing the river if they wanted to fish or crab. You can see that we're staying in these concepts. We made sure to stay, it really hugs the parkway, the parkway because of that parcel boundary. Walkway concept 2 does not go all the way out to the river's edge. It really just gets people out away from their cars, gets them out into the marsh, gets a nice viewscape of the Kiowa River. And those are, concept 1 is 370 linear feet, and concept 2 is 195. This was, upon visiting the site with the subcommittee, taking this to the Marsh Management Committee, this was refined and it was decided upon by the subcommittee for this, this preferred concept 1, which was refined. The primary refinement, or the main point there, is that initial viewing platform. So you can see at the bottom, that's tying into that existing access, where the access is now to that walkway where we're standing in front of, essentially, in that picture on the right. That just moved that first viewing platform closer. So if somebody didn't want to walk, too far from their car, they've got a viewing platform right there. But that one goes all the way out to the river. And then this is just some more dimensions. If this was decided to proceed, of course, you would need engineered drawings. This is conceptual phase, but this is the general square footage of it, and that we're looking at 370 feet long. You've got these viewing platforms that are approximately 20 feet wide, and then at the end you have 18 by 15 foot platform. The bottom left graphic, that is looking at your mean high water. NAVD 88 is 2.49 there at the Kiowa River Bridge. So that is based on NOAA data. That is basically the high tide line, right? Your mean high water. So per regulatory requirement, you have to be 3 feet above that mean high water. That helps also for the sustainability, the longevity of the platform in terms of stress, from water, and it also is going to keep the platform above high tide, even during a spring tide. The picture on the right is a perspective that's showing 2 individuals on the platform. There is interpretive signage there. Something that we definitely talked about as interpretive signage would be really important to talk about the ecology of the salt marsh, the significance of the salt marsh, and then actions to help protect the salt marsh. And then my last couple slides look at that actual, so we've really been talking about improved public access. This is more restoration, looking at the conceptual plan, where you'd have your living shoreline. That's all going to take place, on the river's edge, in between the marsh edge and the low tide line, as well as where we would anticipate your salt marsh restoration could potentially take place. That's what Nicole was mentioning, having community members go out and actually plant salt marsh, Spartina. And you'd have the potential to restore up to 1/2 acre of salt marsh. So this is the concepts for the living shorelines. When we are deciding which living shoreline techniques to incorporate, we're looking at a lot of different factors: the fetch of the river, the wave energy that's coming off of the river, the slope that you're finding there on the river bank, the sediment, firmness or softness. A lot of different things are going on there, but one thing, you'll see here 3 different practices. The core logs are really towed in there along that escarpment that I showed in one of my first slides, where you had that sort of that cliff face, and that's really going to stabilize that marsh edge. Then you have your bag shell and your manufactured wire reefs. They're in that left-hand concept. Those are oyster-based approaches. So because the oyster recruitment is so high at this site, those will do very well, and they'll really be encapsulated. So you will not see any, over time, it will just become an oyster reef. And so once those get established, they're actually able to elevate the marsh platform, and that sediment is trapped behind the oyster treatment, and that actually elevates it and then helps to repair or protect that marsh edge. And then the last one, the concept on the right, is just kind of showing that interplay between the walkway and the living shoreline in terms of an opportunity for, interpretation and getting people out to see not only river, but to also see living shorelines, which are really an emerging practice in South Carolina.
configured there is it's also a deterrent to what you have now, right? There's no ramp down to the marsh. There's no way for people to go traipsing on the marsh, impacting Living Shoreline Project, launching a kayak as opposed to what's there now.
Thank you, Kim. Give me 1 second. I think I have maybe 3 slides. Okay. All right, so I just wanted to do just a little bit of a deeper dive into one portion of the survey, really to look at residents, because it's a question that I got a lot, and we don't have this breakdown in the feasibility study. But so this is just a breakdown from the survey last fall. So we had 498 full-time residents who completed the survey, 755 part-time. 37% of full-time residents had visited the site, 36% of part-timers. And then we looked at, a breakdown of by resident type of, some of the questions asked in the survey. So the first was, how do you get there? So 82% of full-time came by car, 72% of part-time. How often do you visit? So this is the most common answer for full-timers was once or twice a year, 62%, very similar for part-timers. Primary length of visit, 5 to 30 minutes, pretty similar for both full and part-time. Primary activity, nature viewing, again, was the primary use across all categories, but full-time residents, 56% were there for nature viewing, 61% of part-timers. And then fishing and crabbing, I just pulled that out. 16% of full-time residents went there to fish or crab, 30% of part-timers. And then, we, in the feasibility study, we focus on 2 concepts, but as we were bringing things back to the full Marsh Management Committee, we also discussed a 3rd concept, basically a remove public access concept. And so I just thought it would be good real quick to run through the 3 concepts and kind of what we discussed, both within the subcommittee as well as the larger Marsh Management Committee. So concept 1, which turned out to be the preferred alternative to take forward to investigate feasibility. That's the one that goes all the way to the river. Nicole talked about the 5 objectives that we all kind of agreed to at the beginning of all of this. Concept 1 is the only one that meets all of the objectives. It checks all the boxes for all 5 of the objectives. Very minimal disturbance to the marsh, because where this would go is effectively a mud flat right now. Very little marsh growing there. Provides easy access, maintains all current uses, and would be likely eligible for additional Greenbelt funds. So 2, Kim also presented this one, a shorter, platform. So this would not meet all 5 objectives, because it would eliminate fishing, crabbing access, and potentially or probably likely, individuals who wanted to engage in those activities, would likely go through the marsh to continue to do those activities. Another shortfall of this one was that it doesn't take you all the way out to the river, so you don't get that kind of great view of this living shoreline. You're not able to see these, resilience, strategies really in place, so you lose that. So slight less opportunity to educate the public, but because it's obviously about half the length, there'd be slightly less disturbance to the marsh. Concept 3, this was effectively, remove public access entirely, remove the parking, restore the area. So obviously this one also did not meet the committee's objectives. It eliminates all public access. It would violate the Greenbelt Agreement. Individuals would likely still walk through the marsh to fish and crab. Obviously they wouldn't have a place to park, so they'd have to do that by walking or biking, or potentially parking on a road shoulder somewhere else. Obviously no opportunity to educate the public. But a benefit is obviously there'd be no direct marsh disturbance, at least not from building any sort of structure. So my actually, I got one more slide after this, but, there was a number of questions asked about, okay, try to come up with a cost breakdown or cost estimate of these different strategies. So concept one, again, the preferred alternative of the Marsh Management Committee, the 370-foot long raised platform, cost to construct $75,000 to $85,000. Concept two, I did not get pricing on, but concept three, to remove parking area, existing structures, revegetate to match the surrounding area, $28,000 for demo, $15,000 for revegetation, $65,000 that would have to be repaid to the county because we'd be violating the Greenbelt Agreement. So total estimated cost of $108,000 for concept three. And then just a couple of things that I put in there, for discussion purposes. The feasibility study is complete, but we did skip one component of it because we wanted to have this discussion here before we really engaged in the public on these concepts or asked their opinion on these concepts. So just a reminder, that hasn't been done yet. We haven't engaged the public and asked for comments on these concepts. I've heard through the grapevine and have received a number of emails. I think that if we do close this entirely, there's a pretty high potential for significant negative, public feedback on this. This area gets used a lot. I think our survey shows that. So just wanted to point that out. And then the last point, for our residents, right, they have other means to access the river and the marsh, right? They can go to Reds Bluff, they can go to Eagle Point. Our guests and visitors don't have the right to do that. So unless they're, paying to go on a kayak or, trip out of Mingo Point, or, recreate in the marsh some way there, they really don't have another way to get to the marsh and enjoy it. So just a couple of points I would mention, and then I'm sure there will be ample discussion. So
Thank you, Jim, and Nicole and Kim. So I know there's a lot of interest in this, and there'll be a lot of questions. Just a couple, Jim. Going back and relooking at the original feasibility study, there was safety was not one of the considerations in the study. It was not something that was looked at all by Weston and Sampson or anybody else on the committee, or was it?
So early on, that concern was brought up within both the subcommittee and the full committee. I think in one of the original concepts, I think we even had a crosswalk drawn in to connect people from one side to the other. Because obviously Weston and Sampson and Elko Consulting are not, traffic engineers, right? We decided to take the safety component out. We recognize that there's, if, public access is maintained here, the safety issue of crossing that road would have to be addressed. And so obviously that would be the time to bring in a traffic engineer to decide the best way to do that, right? A crosswalk, a raised crosswalk, whatever it might be. So it was recognized, but not looked into.
So, just, yes, sir.
The one option that we talked about the most was kind of a duplication of what they have on Seabrooks Road, where there's a crosswalk with a button that you can push.
It crosses over to the Bohicket
Those
Marina.
are the blinking signs that we're talking about.
Yeah.
So we did talk about that, but as Jim said, we kind of pushed that aside.
Then one other kind of big picture question. We say a lot of people use the site, and it appears, just anecdotally, apart from the survey, but driving up and down every day, that the significant majority of the usage is people that spend a fair amount of time there, and they're down in the marsh and on the river. That's the reason they're there. Or they're launching kayaks or water paddle boards. So if that is the principal reason that most people are there, how is this, the concept one consistent with that?
Well, I think, if you look at the survey data, right, launching of kayaks in particular was not a super high, use percentage-wise. Obviously, when someone's doing that, it's pretty visible that that's what they're doing.
And it's one of the most damaging, I suspect.
Sure, yeah, but absolutely, right? I think most people, when you see them down in the marsh, right, they're going down there to fish or crab or just walk around and look at the marsh, right? Because we are currently providing direct access for people to do that. Why, we've got a ramp that takes them right down in there. And so obviously, the thought behind concept one is, right, you're effectively blocking off access with vegetation and providing only 2 access points, which are raised and still allow you to go over the marsh, experience the marsh, fish and crab, take pictures, paint a picture, do all of the things that, do the vast majority of things that people are already doing today, but in a way that doesn't damage the marsh, and then obviously has the added benefit of, allowing us to educate all these folks about, the importance of the marsh, right? It's the nursery of the ocean ecosystem, right? And it's, sea level rise is a concern, and living shorelines are a great solution. And here's an example, right? It seemed to be a good fit.
I have to get into my rebuttal. Petra, are you ready? So I have a different perspective from this entirely. I've discussed it before at town council meetings that I don't want this platform, I want the entire thing taken out. And it's a couple of background information. Brad talked about this just a second ago. Where approximately, I think the numbers are 74 of the approximate 800 respondents only use it for launching of kayaks. That's about 10% of the usage, if you will. However, I have photographs showing that this smaller percentage is doing great damage to the marsh area. That's not the photo I want. Can you go to the next one? Keep going.
Wait a minute, hold on, 1 second.
Or I can just keep going, or I can just talk to these as they go through them.
That's the bridge, those are the 4 bridge pictures you had.
All right, so there's another one there. All right, so if you go to the second slide from the end of the consultant's presentation, are you able to get there?
Okay. These are the 2 that you picked out.
No, that's different for the deans.
Okay.
So if you go to the second to last slide from the consultant's presentation.
I don't have the consultant's presentation. I have the ones that he wanted.
What did you want?
I'm right there, the one you just went past.
That one?
All right, so what you see there is right above the highest diagram for the coir logs is a pathway that has been cut into the vegetation. And this pathway has been cut by the people who are launching their kayaks. Now, as recently as I think 3 weeks or so ago, we had a lot of email traffic going on when an outside tour operator was unloading trailers of kayaks at the parking area and bringing them right down to the water. So while this relatively small group of people, about 10%, is is not the majority of how the land is being used, this small percentage is causing a significant amount of damage to this reef. That's not going to go away if we do platforms. They're still going to come as long as we have a parking area for them to go visit.
And Russ, to your point, I think that I would think that everybody that actually does these launching of kayaks has not responded to that survey, right? Because they're all people that are not residing on Kiowa or even vacationing on Kiowa. Right.
Petra, I need some photographs again, please, now. I just wanted to show that one. So there is a clear access point. What is not shown in any of the presentation slides that we just saw is the damage not just from the kayaks that I just discussed, but damage to the structural stability of the road and damage to the gabions. These stones are supposed to be piled up alongside the existing gabions. A gabion is a wire mesh basket that provides structural integrity to the embankment of the road and to stop it from sloughing away. This is what the gabions are. What has started to happen, and it was even more evident in the same slide that we're looking at before, the gabions are being destroyed. We, the town, are going to have to pay for this repair because the road will start to slough away. And that's what's going to happen. In addition, these gabions are walked on constantly. Now, another component of people who are using this bridge are those that go fishing. When I've been to the bridge, I guess, 3 or 4 times. There is a large amount of people that sit under the bridge because it's shady. It's not hot. And they are walking on these gabions and destroying them. And that has to be repaired, and that cost to make this repair is simply because of people accessing the area. So, with that being the case, I want to have the parking area pulled out, revegetated, and do not allow any access whatsoever because we are going to lose the embankment for this bridge in a period of time. That's it.
I just wanted to let you know that we are the ones that put the gabions in.
That's okay.
It was a project that was done when Rusty was here.
So,
Go ahead, sir.
okay. So first of all, I agree with everything that Russ said, but I have a few questions. So first, Jim, I think you were saying in your, very much towards the end, something like that this is really the only location for people to do this as long as they don't have access to the island. But there's Mingo Point. Now, a lot of people don't know that, but that's part of, our mistake or, what we maybe could have done better. There's Mingo Point also available for the public, to go, both as it relates to access to the water and even kayaking, either as being part of their program or bring your own kayak and pay $5. So just, we have to be careful, stating certain things when there are alternatives.
Wait, can you clarify? So Mingo Point, right, you can pay to launch a kayak there.
Yep.
But if you're a visitor, you can't go to Mingo and go out on their dock and fish your crab or recreate.
You can, fishing, I don't know, but I've been there many times and nobody has stopped me, so. But anyway,
Okay.
mostly we are really concerned about the kayaking point. But that just not only to complete the data points you provided. What I really wanted to know, so if I'm not mistaken, for the last 3 or 4 years, all storms that we have seen, unexpected ones, like in December 17th, or before, hurricanes, tropical storms, etc. If I'm not mistaken, I remember that most of these events created winds that hit the island from the east. Okay, and that means that water is pushed into the Kiowa River from Stoner River and the ocean. And basically, embarking or being pushed against our road system. So putting that much bigger structure in place as today, how would that harm or protect, I don't know, actually our road there? Because I was told that those kind of structures actually are more harming than safeguarding, dunes or embankments like this. So under the assumption that we see maybe more of those, eastern winds during these storms, what would that make, or how would that impact the road with a structure like Concept 1 or Concept 2 in place?
Yeah, I mean, I'm not sure I can 100% answer that. I do know that, and Brian, I don't know if you want to speak to it, but in terms of the damage to the gabion walls, I know Brian's already investigated the cost to repair that. And I think it's in the neighborhood of a couple $1,000.
Yeah, so I had
No, I'm not talking about the repairs. I'm talking about Concept 1 or Concept 2 is in place. Okay, and we have a severe rain storm event with winds hitting from the east, pushing water into the Kiowa River and towards the bridge and towards the road. What happens to our embankment, the road, et cetera, repaired or not is not my point. But what would it have, I mean, how much force would it have to destroy things because these structures are there? And is it helping or is it hurting?
Well, I mean, certainly, obviously the reasoning behind Concept 1 is that we recognize the marsh is damaged in that area. The marsh is important, right? And Concept 1, at least in the majority of the committee felt, right, that it eliminates, it's not 100%, but right, it's designed to eliminate folks walking through the marsh, destroying the marsh, trampling the marsh, walking on the gabion walls, all of those things. And then obviously the second, component of this would be restoring what's already damaged, right? So the thought was, we have a problem, the marsh is in bad shape, it's mainly from people walking, kayaking, going through it. We need to get people out of the marsh and we need to fix the marsh. And so Concept 1 was, in the opinion of the committee, the majority of the committee, the concept that did that. And so therefore made, the parkway and, the marsh more resilient to potential storms. I mean, if your concern is, having, however much wood would be involved in this and waves hit it and parts break off, I mean, I guess that's possible, but it certainly would be substantially more resilient and storm resistant than all the floating docks that we have on the island, because it's elevated 3 feet above mean high water. It sits below the level of the parkway, so it's not, up in line with the parkway. It's down below elevation wise.
I think one of the things that at least I'm struggling with, and maybe some others are as well, is kind of the disconnect that if a lot of people are there for 5 minutes, sometimes it's less than that. I've probably pulled over half a dozen times to get a picture of a full moon or something like that, sure. And then you're back out. This enhances that experience for the people that are just stopping by for a few minutes. But what the data seems to be telling us, what we can all see anecdotally, is the vast majority of the users there, at least those that stay for a period of time, really don't have any interest in just being up on a platform or walkway for a little bit. They want to be down in the river, either fishing, crabbing, or kayaking or paddleboarding. So this doesn't, if you in fact eliminated access by virtue of this, that would close off what most people are actually using this for most of the time. But it's also just not clear how what the walkway does, as well intended as it might be, actually prohibits the same activity that is damaging the marsh now that led to this proposal in the first place.
Yeah, I mean, it's a good point, and something that was certainly discussed within the committee, right? And the thinking is, the people that are walking down into the marsh to fish or crab, my guess would be almost all of those people would rather engage in those activities from a non-muddy, non-slippery surface like a fixed platform, right? So the folks that are fishing and crabbing can still walk the same distance and fish and crab in deep water at any time of the day, any time of the tide cycle, and enjoy those activities.
Well, I think human beings are a little bit more complicated like this.
Yeah, because
So how many times have you seen people fishing from the bridge? Although we have signs on both sides of the bridge clearly stating in big letters that fishing from the bridge is not allowed, and people still, I can't tell you how many times, especially on the weekends, I see people fishing from the bridge. Russ was talking about people seeing, fishing from
day.
under the bridge.
because it's shady.
My opinion is, if people want to do something, they're doing it. No matter if there's a fence, no matter if there's a dock, no matter if there's a railing, whatsoever. People come to this place and they want to do whatever they do. And we have seen it before. For example, this structure, like both option 1 and option 2, will not prevent people from launching kayaks, right? Or, which you're not included in your phase 1 or concept 1 and concept 2, you need a fence, probably 4 feet high, all along the parking area and probably even a bit further so that people are not creating a new breach into the vegetation where they're pulling down their kayak to the water. That's what humans do. There is no sense behind it. There is no logic. They ignore rules, right? Like today, how often do you see commercial people parking there? And there are big signs all along the parking area that commercial traffic is not allowed to stop. How many times have you seen people that are stopping there in the morning because they're waiting for the 7 o'clock opening of the gate for commercial traffic, and in the afternoon you see people standing there and waiting for their colleagues to come off island so they can switch cars and go to their homes? That's what people do. And it's not allowed, and they're still doing it.
Yeah, you make some great points. Obviously, the launching of kayaks going forward at that site, assuming you move forward with concept 1. Obviously, we've discussed signage, right? There's currently no signage that says you can't do that, because technically it's allowed right now, but there's also no signage that says you can drive 200 yards and park your vehicle and launch a kayak for $5 at a paved ramp with water to wash everything off when you're done, right? And so, I guess I would think that most people, if you're coming to launch a kayak, you would rather drive an extra 200 yards, slide it down a concrete ramp, rinse your feet and everything off with a hose and load it back on your vehicle, right? So, obviously if you include that as part of the signage package for something like this, then hopefully most folks would take advantage of that. And obviously, right, I don't have an agenda here, and I feel like a lot of times it seems like I'm pushing something, right? I'm a scientist. I've collected data. I'm looking at the data. I'm, basing it on my 25 years of driving past that spot and what I've seen. And, it's, the task was, what are the issues there and how can we fix it? And so the issues are the marshes being disturbed and has been for, 25 plus years, right? It's been going on forever, and we're only looking at it now just because kind of got all brought up in this marsh management plan. But how do we get people out of the marsh, and how do we fix the marsh?
Yeah,
And
to
so,
Michael's point, I don't think whatever option that's selected is going to stop the kayaking. I don't think it will.
It's probably
walking
easier to
on-
stop the kayaking with signage and some fencing, but I don't think you're ever going to stop the people that just want to go down and park themselves under the bridge all day long and then occasionally go out a little bit either side. And
The greatest way to at least minimize it is to remove the parking, in my mind. They'll still
Nicole,
come by
did you
bicycle.
have another point you wanted to make?
To design a concept that allows for the uses that are what we want. And all of those were everything except kayaking, right? We were given guidance from the very beginning. Like, I think y'all were considering an ordinance maybe at some point. So we had always designed this with in mind